The Mamba mentality. We heard a lot about the Mamba mentality and Kobe Bryant. What is the Mamba mentality? Well, let me tell you, if you want to look up what the Mamba mentality is in the dictionary, if Kobe Bryant's picture's not next to it, Jalen Hurts' picture is right next to it because he lives and breathes that Mamba mentality Kobe Bryant's every day. Not next to it, Jalen Hurts. What did I not? Right next to there. Oops. Forgot to mute something there. Anyway, Mamba mentality. Scott Rolen is now a Major League Baseball Hall of Famer. All that and more, trending in the AM starts in 30 seconds.
Holding, gets around in front. Joel Embiid,
and Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. But if you want to get interactive with the show, do me that favor and head over to the DSM Media YouTube page. Hit that like button, that subscribe button, turn the notifications on. It's the best place to get interactive with the show. Place to drop your comments, thoughts, questions, whatever you may have as we continue this trek towards another NFC championship game for our Philadelphia Eagles. I am your host, Phil Stiefel, of the best damn morning show in the biz here, Trending the AM. I got Jason Voorhees sitting in here next to me today. Good morning, Jason. How you doing today?
Much better than yesterday. No computer glitches.
No computer glitches, except I did because I forgot to mute one of the tabs in the background. And, yeah, we had a little feedback there in my little intro, which kind of ruined that.
That's all good.
No, it's amateur hour. Amateur hour there from me. So we got lots on the agenda today. And so, again, this week, I said it yesterday. I'll say it again today. I really don't have an agenda this week. Friday, we'll break down on Friday the X's and O's specifically of this game, the keys to victory, etc. And I've tried to get some San Francisco beat writers and content creators on this show, but unfortunately, I keep forgetting that San Francisco is 3 hours behind. So every single person I've asked to come on the show are like, yeah, I'm not waking up at 5:30 in the morning to come on your show. So it's just us. And it's hard to talk this because we're fans as well. And yesterday I saw somebody tweet something out and it got me thinking, and thought it would be a really great jumping off point today as we talk Eagles and hype this game up and stuff. And somebody said that, forget who it was Jalen Hurts and Kobe Bryant probably would have been really good friends. Kobe Bryant and Jalen Hurts probably would have worked out a lot in the offseason together. And it made me think about that whole phrase that he coined, the Mamba mentality. And what does the Mamba mentality mean? And to me, Jason, the Mamba mentality basically means exactly what Jalen Hurts has done since the day he's gotten to Philadelphia. From being not one to be here, because nobody wanted us to draft him in that second round. They wanted a defensive player, a wide receiver, whatever it may be, to Carson Wentz not wanting him here, him struggling, his 4 games, his rookie year, him nobody wanting him here after last season's loss in the playoffs. Go get Russell Wilson, go get whoever. But he put the work in. That rent check is due every day, that 1% better every day mentality that he has had since the day he started playing football, probably since high school, is why we are at the point we are right now. And I'll tell you this. I'll take somebody with the Mamba mentality 10 times out of 10 over somebody that doesn't. I would prefer the Mamba mentality over just pure talent any day.
I mean, absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point. And it's exactly why, as much as the Niners present a tough opponent, I don't think enough people are understanding how much of an advantage we have at quarterback, having Jalen Hurts over Brock Purdy. Like, as much as everyone's been on the hype train for Brock Purdy, and yes, he's done some very nice things, Jalen Hurts is in that next tier, close in coming to becoming elite. Mm-hmm. And the guy, it's not just what he does on the field, it's that leadership and it's that Mamba mentality that you're talking about. And that's why I feel super confident. As much as I know that the Niners are going to present a tough task, I'm confident that the Eagles are going to win this football game because we have Jalen Hurts. We have Jalen Hurts. Like, I mean, honest to God, like every single season, these teams are chasing quarterbacks, and we have one. Like, we thought Carson Wentz was the answer back in the day when he was first drafted. And, he had that first good season. But, like, Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts it's not even close in comparison because Carson Wentz had some super good physical tools, but he's not a good locker room guy, and he's not a leader.
You're bringing up Carson Wentz, but I really was hoping you would have brought up a different name there. And I want to bring that name up instead. And I want to get your opinions on this because, look, what's Jalen Hurts, 25? He's in his second full season as a starter. Guy that's in the news a lot right now is Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, talent-wise, arm talent-wise, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Does not have that Mamba mentality. Has that more of that Carson Wentz non-locker room leader type me personality. How many Super Bowls has Aaron Rodgers won, Jason? How many years has Aaron Rodgers been in the NFL?
15.
Close to 20? He's like 18 years in the league, and he's won one Super Bowl. I would much rather have somebody as my franchise quarterback with that Mamba mentality that Jalen Hurts rent check is due every day, 1% better every day. I'd rather that personality than someone like Aaron Rodgers who, yes, supremely talented, has a great arm, can throw a great football, but no one follows him into battle. I mean, sorry, I was setting you up to go in there, and then you were taking a drink at that exact second. But, I mean, is there something to that maybe teams are chasing that next great quarterback too much instead of looking at the leader? Because right now, I would rather a Jalen Hurts type than an Aaron Rodgers type.
I mean, absolutely. Like, think about the people in this town that wanted Russell Wilson. And look at the bullet that we dodged by not making that kind of a – I mean, Jesus. Yeah. Like, could you imagine if that had happened? Like,
I think I brought up on this show last year, if Aaron Rodgers is available, should we trade for Aaron Rodgers? Along that same train with Russell Wilson. I think his name was even mentioned here last year.
It was, and you're right. I think to a certain extent, teams are overdoing it with chasing that next great quarterback because the bottom line is there's a fine line. I mean, yes, you want that guy that's going to be your franchise guy, but you don't necessarily need a top 1 or 2 or even 3 quarterback. And like I said, I think Jalen Hurts has kind of risen to that. He's in between the top 10 and top 5. I mean, he could be in the top 5 at this point. I think if he wins the Super Bowl, he is. But you mentioned the guy yesterday, Josh Allen, who's mentioned in that top 3 all the time, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. He hasn't made a Super Bowl yet. He hasn't made the Super Bowl, and he's only made one AFC championship. So, honestly, I think to a certain extent, yes, I want a guy. You want both. I mean, you want a leader and you want a guy with talent. But like,
you want Joe Cool, you want Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, talent and leadership. But those guys don't grow on trees. So to me, I value the intangibles. I'm not saying you can have an arm like Colt McCoy and or Chase Daniels and have Jalen Hurts leadership and be successful. But if you've got average talent, like we were honest last year. We said Jalen Hurts was 12th, 14th best quarterback in football last year. If you have that with the intangibles, I think you're pretty much set up for success long term. Because if you have that Mamba mentality, look, I was going to bring up another comment, but I think this talks into it. I was going to say, if we lose this week to San Francisco, would you consider this season a success? And I know I always talk about expectations change as the year goes on in all sports. And yes, my expectations have changed from making a run to I want a Super Bowl appearance. That's what I want. But after the storm settles, if we lost on Sunday, just say, you let it go a couple of weeks. Yeah, we'd probably look back at this season as a success. But what would leave me, most years in a Donovan McNabb era, we lose in a championship game, it's all doom and gloom. If we lost Sunday against San Francisco, I would have so much positive confidence going into next season because I know Jalen Hurts wouldn't settle. He wouldn't be happy with the results of this season. Getting to the championship game isn't good enough for him. Winning the Super Bowl every year is what he wants. And that's the difference between a Mamba mentality personality as your leader versus just somebody that's a pure talent at that position.
Yeah, I agree that I think once the dust would settle, we would feel that way. But you do have to look at it as they will not ever probably have a talented roster as much as talent they have now because of the fact that guys like Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson, like they're not going to last forever. And once you start losing those kind of pieces, it's hard to, I know Howie's been given a lot of praise and justly do, but it's hard to kind of replace, guys that are Hall of Fame level players. And so the roster that they have this season, this would be the year to win it. But yeah,
and it's very hard. It's very hard to get to this point of the season
in general.
There's only 4 teams left. It's very hard to get here. That's why very few teams. I mean, who was in the NFC Championship game last year?
The Niners.
Were they? Well, the Rams. The Rams didn't make the playoffs. The Bucs. Was it the Bucs last year against the Rams? I know the Rams made the Super Bowl. I forget who they beat to get to the Super Bowl.
The Niners.
Were the Niners? Okay. The Bucs won. Won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They've been a much worse team. It's very hard to be repetitive in this game. You know what I mean? Unless you have Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes out west, or in the AFC, it's a little different for them. But it's very hard to be consistently at this point, year in and year out.
Yeah.
So you have to grab it when it's there for you. But
to your point, I think you would feel, as you said, confident that this team is still going to be good and relevant for the next foreseeable future because of Jalen Hurts. And that's what, yes, you can take solace in that. I'm just saying, I guess I was just saying, yeah, I would be disappointed because you're right. Every time you get to a certain level, your expectations, waver. I mean, like I said, I legitimately think the Eagles have a better than great chance to win Sunday. Now,
I agree with you.
You might be talking differently when we go to the Super Bowl this time than we did back in 2017. Because listen, as great as Brady is, it's still a team game. And that team that beat Brady, I mean, we beat it with Nick Foles having arguably his best performance as a pro. I mean, the chances of that happening, but it's still going to be like, oh my God, we're in the Super Bowl. Like, we're this close. Like, and that's why.
Think about it with the Phillies. I mean, we had this conversation when the Phillies went to the World Series. Look, we'll be disappointed if they lose. But now that's been a few months past, and we're closer to the next season than the last. We can look back on last year's season as a success for the Phillies because enough time has gone by. The dust has settled. It was disappointing, but it was a successful season. But while there's some leaders on the Phillies team, there's still a lot of question marks going into the season. So we couldn't accept the disappointment as much. If we are disappointed this year, whether it's this weekend or in a few weeks in the Super Bowl, we'll be able to know we have Jalen Hurts here. And he is going to take, yes, there's going to be a lot of turnover on this team for multiple reasons. The salary cap reason, and also when you are a great football team, teams poach your players, your free agents, your coaches, and whatnot. There'll be a lot of turnover here. But I don't doubt the fact that Jalen Hurts, the leader, will have those guys ready to go again next year. And he's going to push. Hell, even if we go on and win the Super Bowl this year, it's not going to be good enough for Jalen Hurts. He's going to want Super Bowl 2. He's going to want Super Bowl 3. He's just going to want to keep getting better every single year. And that's something you can't quantify. Like, you can quantify 4,000 passing yards. You can quantify 40 touchdown passes or whatever the numbers are that Aaron Rodgers. I heard Aaron Rodgers, I don't listen to it because I can't stand him, but, Aaron Rodgers, that is. But he's always on the Pat McAfee show, like, all the time now, like, in and out. And look, whether you like Pat McAfee or not, whatever, him and Aaron Rodgers, I just can't stand those interviews every single week. But he was asked about it. He's going to have a $60 million cap hit this year. with the Packers. And he's like, yeah, that'll have to be restructured slightly so that, whatever. But not talking about trying to find a way to make the team better, just a way to make sure that he gets his money. That's not a leader. Aaron Rodgers might be one of the 5 or 10 best quarterbacks of all time. But are you going to follow him into battle? And Lane Johnson, just use that for an example. Torn freaking groin he's out there playing with. Jalen Hurts probably inspires him to want to go out there and be better. You think Aaron Rodgers is going to inspire Lane Johnson to tough it out? And what I'm not saying Lane Johnson would sit in a championship game because of it, but what I'm saying is that inspiring, personality of Hurts versus Rodgers, Lane Johnson is willing to let his groin completely rip off the bone. Grab some bobby pins and duct tape, hold it together, and let me go out there because Jalen Hurts inspires me. Aaron Rodgers doesn't do that.
Aaron Rodgers is an asshole. He's the exact opposite.
110%.
He's the opposite of Jalen Hurts. He's the guy that I would never want to play for or with. I just wouldn't, because you could tell he's a me guy. And you know what?
And his record says it. His record says
how good he is. It's obvious that as good as he is, he's not good enough to get his players to rise to better levels. Because Davante Adams, who everyone said was the reason why, Aaron Rodgers did well, went to the Raiders and actually had just as good a season with a quarterback that's basically probably 15%, less, not Derek Carr isn't even close to the quarterback that Aaron Rodgers is, and that Davante Adams still had a great season. So to me, Aaron Rodgers is not a guy that carries his players to better production or better success, because Green Bay shit the bed this year.
Yeah. I mean, they made a comeback at the end of the year, obviously. They made a little bit of a run there at the end of the year, but it wasn't because Aaron Rodgers wasn't making people better. It was more like some of those wins were more by default. I don't know. People always are looking for that next great arm talent. And we've had this conversation on this show so many times, but there's so few and far between out there. And to me, I think this week, being at this point this week, solidifies the fact that I think teams, when they, the draft will be coming up in a month or two, after the season ends. And, when you're evaluating all these CJ Stroud and Carson Strong, all these quarterbacks that are going to get drafted way too early, because personally, again, there's a bunch of quarterbacks that have talent, but they don't deserve to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. They're not that. You don't have an Andrew Luck level talent coming out this year. And people should be evaluating these quarterbacks, not just can they throw that 20-yard back shoulder throw, can they inspire a team? Can they inspire a room? Can they lead people into battle? I think people, they evaluate that, but they don't evaluate it high enough on the importance chart. And I think Jalen Hurts is proof that should be a much more important factor when evaluating quarterback talent.
I mean, you're kind of segueing perfectly into what I was just thinking. Not only did the Eagles dodge that bullet of not going after a guy like Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, remember there was rumors out there that they wanted to trade up and draft Zach Wilson. Could you imagine if that would have happened? Like, all of these things that you hear and you're like, oh my goodness. And a lot of people wanted it. Look at Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson might not even be the Jets starter anymore. And he was drafted second? Was it first or second?
He was drafted second.
Okay.
The Eagles were only able to, they had a deal lined up to get up to number 3. They wouldn't go up to number 2. That's the rumor. But see, that's the thing. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Teams, draft these quarterbacks all the time. You look at it that year, you had, who went number 1 that year? Why can't I think of it? Zach Wilson went 2. Trey Lance went 3. Justin Fields went 4 or 5 that year. Who was the one that went 1 overall that year? I can't even think of it. But these guys were not top 5 draft picks. Trey Lance had no reason to draft Trey Lance number 3 or Zach Wilson number 2. There's no reason. But they do. And because they evaluate this pro day and they evaluate this combine where these guys can throw a 30-yard back shoulder throw with no pressure on them, and we're going to invest our future in this guy. And more times than not, it fails. for every Jalen Hurts or Andrew Luck, there's a Tim Couch or a Kelce Smith that just gets totally. We almost drafted a Kelce Smith, or what was that? Was that his name? He went to the Bengals. Instead, we almost drafted him over Donovan McNabb. And yeah, we can bash Donovan McNabb, but there's a big difference in the careers of Donovan and Smith there. The evaluation of these quarterbacks and the leadership and the pressure put on them from such a quick spot in their career, it's unfortunate. And I really, truly believe that Mamba mentality is what should be right there next to being able to throw that 30-yard back shoulder is, can you lead? How do you lead a room? How do you captivate an audience? I think it's so much more important.
It's probably the most important, because a quarterback with all the arm strength in the world but no leadership won one Super Bowl in 18 seasons. Aaron Rodgers. Perfect example.
It is. Phillip Rivers, a great quarterback, never played in a Super Bowl.
Dan Marino.
Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl, one of the greatest throwers of football of all time. And now I'm not comparing all those guys to Aaron Rodgers. There's circumstances in each situation. But Aaron Rodgers, because we're seeing him now, we can see he is not the leader. Just compare Aaron Rodgers to Tom Brady. We might hate Tom Brady. But let's be honest, he's the GOAT. And he does inspire. He won Super Bowls with some pretty poor, talented offenses around him. Great offensive line, great defense, average running backs, average wide. For as many times as we complain about Donovan McNabb's lack of weapons, well, Tom Brady early in his career didn't have weapons either. So, he was able to lead his team. Obviously, everyone still makes fun of his draft day pictures and his combine pictures and how he didn't look the part of a quarterback or an athlete or anybody, yet he worked hard every single day. He put the effort in and he led by example. Aaron Rodgers is leading, Miles Teller to some cave to jump off of into the ocean and hanging out and partying and smoking weed or whatever he does. He strikes me as a guy that's sitting in a circle, around a campfire, passing the bong around, and that's it. He doesn't lead his team by example.
I mean, you can go down the list. I mean, you can look at it kind of the opposite effect. Joe Montana, a guy that didn't have a ton of arm strength. Joe Montana was, a guy that was, look at his numbers. It wasn't like he put up gaudy stats, but he was a leader and he carried his team and he was a winner. And that to me, like I said, you look at all those things and those traits. I think that's the most important trait. Somebody that's a leader doesn't need all the talent in the world. All they need is.
I would say, is it insane to think that Jalen Hurts, and I don't want to sound homerish when I say this, because obviously he's our guy, he's an Eagle, blah, blah, blah. But is it insane to think that Jalen Hurts will end his career with more Super Bowl wins than Aaron Rodgers?
No, it's not insane, because he's also not only the guy that has the Mamba mentality, he's in an organization that is basically the gold standard of the NFL. I mean, I look at the Eagles and I don't really see too many organizations out there that do it better. I mean, we talked about it. How many seasons, as much as we complain every year when we lose, we still have good teams. We're in the playoffs 90% of the time. There's teams out there that never make the playoffs. I mean, look at teams like the Jets, teams like, the Raiders. There's teams that just suffer through bad season year.
I remember you bring up Joe Montana, and I remember an interview with Jerry Rice. This is when he was still in his playing careers and all. And yeah, I followed him. My brother was a Fugazi 49ers fan for some random reason, in a house bred to bleed green. And I remember listening to an interview with Jerry Rice that during training camp, when they would be working on their routes in San Francisco, that Joe Montana would have to hit on every pass the inside circle of the 8 on Jerry Rice's jersey. Even if the pass was completed, but say it hit his left shoulder instead of his right shoulder, right where that 0 was, they would rerun the play because he wanted to work so hard on being perfect every single time. He literally wanted a target this big. And if he didn't hit it, even if it was an inch off of that little tiny target, run it again. Run it again. We are going to get this perfect every time. And that's why the 49ers were so great for so long. because they had that leader, not just a talented quarterback, the leader that wanted perfection every time. Don't settle for anything less than perfect.
And then that leader groomed another leader, Steve Young, who
Absolutely.
followed in his footsteps and basically was a career backup guy that all of a sudden became a superstar. And
To the Hall of Famer.
I know, it's insane to me. But he learned under Joe Montana. And that's the kind of guy that Jalen Hurts is. Like, I got to be honest with you. I can already see it. When Jalen Hurts' career is said and done, he will be a coach. He will be running it in some capacity, a leadership position.
Well, I mean, he's got the traits to do it. It's, normally guys that go on and have these long, super uber successful careers aren't always, they're ready for a break. They don't always transition into the
I got that.
They end up getting big money to go be an analyst on ESPN or NBC or whatever because it's the easier lifestyle and all. One other thing, I mean, we talk about Jalen Hurts' leadership, and I brought up another guy yesterday on Twitter, and I want to bring this up, is Jason Kelce, and this could be his swan song. It really could be. If we win the Super Bowl this year, there's a high chance that he walks away. I mean, he's almost walked away now 2 or 3 years in a row. First and foremost, if this is his swan song, they better win one more for this guy. One of the greatest centers, one of the greatest linemen, one of the greatest leaders of all time. But it also helps Jalen Hurts, young Jalen Hurts, starting all the way back when he took over in 2020 as the quarterback of this team. It helps Jalen Hurts establish his leadership of this team when you've got a guy like Jason Kelce right by his side. So for as much as we're praising, Jalen Hurts' leadership, just as much of it has to be, a congratulations or a thank you or show the respect to Jason Kelce because this was his team and he's let Jalen Hurts take it over to an extent. And, having that example set from when he was a rookie Jalen Hurts, then kind of like pass the torch, groom Jalen Hurts into being the guy in charge of that locker room. For as great of an offensive lineman as Jason Kelce is one of the greatest centers of all time, first ballot Hall of Famer for sure, he also helped groom and set the stage, and his leadership, it's praised, but I don't think it's praised enough.
No, it's not. I think when I think of a guy like Jason Kelce, it's like we talked about it yesterday. He's on the level of like the pantheon of superstar positional players. Like he just is because of what he brings to the table, like at his position. It's not just what he does on the field. I mean, he has that super athletic ability. He's uber talented as far as, being able to, run that offensive line, no matter what way the Eagles are going, whether they're going to run the football or whether it's a passing scheme day, he's always on point. He's able to they show all these videos of him like getting out and like leading the charge when they're, doing those, whatever they're called, sweep plays. And I mean, it's just insane to me to watch a guy of his size just be able to like truck people like they're nothing. Like,
right.
I mean, trucking guys like Jordan Davis, like to the ground, like it's just insane. And then like, obviously, you can't think of Jason Kelce without remembering that speech that he had at the parade. Like, I mean, an insane, and it's not only insanely talented, but insanely smart. Like you listen to Jason Kelce when he talks and when he's interviewed, he's very smart. Like I love his podcast with his brother. I mean, it's fun to watch. Like I know, like, they keep it real and they kind of let you into their like who they are. I mean, and it's just so cool seeing two brothers that are superstars in the NFL. And like, it's just cool. I mean,
it's just crazy to think that he might walk away. What is he, 34, 35 years old? And he's still such a dominating force on that offensive line. Now, I have to think that he's walking away. He doesn't give the vote of confidence to Cam Jurgens to get drafted, in the second round last year, unless he's told the front office, no matter what, I'm probably walking away after this year. But, I mean, you look at the footage, and I know everyone's seen the one clip of him one-arming, slamming one of the Giants' defensive linemen down. on Saturday night, but the guy's still playing at an elite all-pro level. And it's so hard. You don't normally see athletes of any sport walk away when they're still playing at the top of their game.
Yeah, but the thing is you got to remember, if he does, like, say they do win the Super Bowl, that's 2 Super Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to accomplish anything else. And the thing that I think about is that he's got 2 young kids. I mean, and to me, I think sometimes athletes have to take a look in the mirror and they say, I love this game, but I want to go out on top. And sometimes I'd rather see that than see a guy like Tom Brady, who is the GOAT, kind of struggle. Like, this year he struggled mightily. Now, I know a lot of that probably had to do with the divorce and that fallout, but it just makes you think, like, soon, why not try to go out on top? I mean, guys like Michael Jordan, that kind of still probably had something left in the tank, but they just know it's their time.
That's actually a fair comparison. Like Michael Jordan with the Washington Wizards is kind of like where Tom Brady was, because Tom Brady didn't play bad this year. He just didn't play Tom Brady GOAT level. It's not like he was throwing 5,000 yards and 50 bombs down the field to Mike Evans all game long. It's kind of like what Michael Jordan did with the Wizards there, that random run at the end of his career.
Yeah, and it just, I don't know. I just think that sometimes athletes should just take a picture, take a picture out of someone else's book and say, it's time to go. Like,
well, a lot of guys just don't know when it's time to go, but also it's hard to leave that lifestyle. As a big wrestling fan, Royal Rumble's coming up, this weekend, and it's the same thing in wrestling. There's a lot of these guys, they'll wrestle, they'll call it a career, and then they'll come back because they miss being part of the locker room. They miss the camaraderie. In wrestling, it's the guys in the back and the girls. In football or baseball, it's the locker room. That mentality, being on the road with the guys, all year long, the practices. It's hard when you've played a sport. These football players, they start in Pee Wee level, high school, college, on the road nonstop, pros on the road nonstop. It's hard to walk away from that. But, sometimes you get that person like Jason Kelce that just knows it's just time to go away. I want to be with my family, and that's it. It's just still hard to imagine somebody walking away at that peak of a level. That's all it is.
I mean, listen, I don't want to see him go, obviously.
Yeah,
selfish
nobody
reasons.
wants to see him go,
selfish reasons, but like, as you said,
he's been grooming his replacement for a year now. So,
yeah, I mean, listen, we are so blessed because I don't know too many teams that have had, as you said, almost two Hall of Fame level. They probably will both make the Hall of Fame. Jason Kelce, Lane Johnson. The only comparison I can remember, that even comes close would probably be John Runyon and
Trey Thomas.
But like,
they were great, but I don't know if anybody's putting them in the Hall of Fame.
No, and that's what I mean. Like, it's just insane the level that these two guys are at. And like you said, nobody wanted Lane Johnson back in that draft. Everyone was complaining and bitching and moaning because, we didn't take a wide receiver.
And now look at it. Now, 10 years later, he's the best right tackle in football for how many years in a row? And, running through a brick wall for Jalen Hurts, literally. So I just think it's I just thought this was a very interesting conversation to have. This Mamba mentality, you know what I mean? And, what you prefer in your leaders and your people. And again, this is not a knock on Aaron Rodgers per se, the quarterback, or the talent that he has. And I think it's a great segue into this, when we're going to talk about the Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball Hall of Fame here in a minute, and Scott Rolen being the lone, person voted in yesterday. Aaron Rodgers doesn't make friends. He doesn't, strike you as a guy that's, the best buddy of everybody, just like Scott Rolen. Scott Rolen rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and we're going to get into Scott Rolen in a minute. Doesn't mean Scott Rolen's not a viable Hall of Fame candidate. It doesn't mean Aaron Rodgers isn't one of the greatest of all time to play quarterback. It just means that he hasn't inspired his team to win a title, more than one time. How many Super Bowls has he even played in? 2 others? Was he 1-2 or 1-1 in the Super Bowl?
I'm trying to remember. I think it's 1-1.
1-1. I'm just going to type it in real quick here.
It might have only. He only might have been to
How many
one.
has he played in? How many Super Bowls has Aaron Rodgers played in?
Might only be one.
A 1-1. Super Bowl 45, defeating the Steelers. And I think that is it. I think he's only played in one, and he's won one. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it like that. It really is.
I think Brett Favre only played in one.
He was 1-1 in the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I'm almost positive he played in 2. I know he lost one, so if he won one, he definitely lost one too. It's just crazy. I mean, and again, it's not taking away anything from his talent. It's just taking away the fact that he doesn't have that leadership quality that Jalen Hurts does. It might be a little homer of us to say that Jalen Hurts is going to win more than one Super Bowl. We've got his whole career to look forward to. But I trust him more.
You're bringing up this discussion, and I love it. I love talking about like kind of these kind of, similarities and comparisons, and whether this one kind of has a different, different vibe or feeling. Like a guy that I remember, that had that Mamba mentality that kind of came out of nowhere. Nobody even knew who he was Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner is a guy that,
bagging groceries.
Was working what I do for a living.
Literally,
he was your grocery guy. Was a Super Bowl quarterback, and he led that team. Yes, they had weapons. They had a lot of stars on that team, but he was the guy driving the bus. And Dick Vermeil, I don't know if you saw the movie. If you haven't, I highly recommend.
It seemed a little too cheesy for me.
I'm telling you, it wasn't cheap. Like if you watched it, like I was in tears watching it because they really did a great job, like with it. It wasn't one of those like Lifetime type movies. It was more so.
The previews made me think it should have been on the Hallmark Channel.
Yeah, it was actually a very good movie, and it showed that like nobody like the offensive coordinator Mark Martz. He wanted nothing to do with Kurt Warner. Like he wanted to go with the other guy that Johnson got hurt, and they're deciding who's going to be the quarterback, and Dick Vermeil, like all along, was like, no, Kurt's my guy, and he like stuck with him, and that it just like, the guy's a Hall of Famer, like, and he didn't have, superstar talent, but he was that leader. He was that guy. Like he believed in himself, and I'm not saying that.
And if you believe in yourself and you put the work, guess what? That bleeds to the other people around you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It translates to the rest of the team. If you have an asshole personality like Aaron Rodgers, it translates to the rest of the team. Nobody, you don't see Aaron Rodgers wide receivers wanting to go hang out with him and work out, in the offseason. Maybe Devontae Adams wanted to, but Devontae Adams actually wanted out of Green Bay to go play with his buddy Derek Carr. Maybe deep down inside, Devontae Adams was getting tired of Aaron Rodgers as well. You're not going to see people want to leave Philly because of Jalen Hurts. They might leave Philly because of money, salary cap issues, whatnot, because Howie Roseman's a smart GM and knows when to move on and when not to. But you're not going to see people leave here because Jalen Hurts is an a-hole. You're just not. I think that's the crux of it right there.
They love him. I mean, everybody loves him.
And we love him. I love him. I think we're set for success for a long time here because of Jalen Hurts.
The only person left in America that doesn't believe in Jalen Hurts is Chris Sims, and I don't know if you saw that video of him. Did you see the video? Oh my God!
I'm gonna smash my head up against the wall. There's somebody else, a video floating around of another national show, and they were ranking the top 4 quarterbacks left in the NFL playoffs, and they put Purdy ahead of Jalen Hurts. I can see if you want to put Mahomes and Burrow ahead of Hurts, by all means do it. Yeah, have at it. And you're right. You're probably right. They are better quarterbacks at this point than Jalen Hurts. But if you're going to rank Brock frickin' Purdy ahead of Jalen Hurts, You're only doing it for one reason. For
Clickbait.
clicks. That's all. There's no other reason. And when the guy was saying this list and putting Purdy ahead of him, he was laughing. And he knew what he was doing. He knew it was going to it was pissing off the two people sitting on the desk with him. Because they knew. They're like, don't do it. He's like, I'm going to do it. Don't do it. I'm going to do it. And he was making it a joke. It just Chris Sims. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about Chris Sims. Let's transition here.
Well, that's what the reason it makes it funnier is the video floating around of Chris Sims in a practice with Tampa Bay. Before. Yeah, and I
will give Chris Sims some, benefit of the doubt. There have been a lot of quarterbacks that have said John Gruden's plays and what he would require of them to call and the phrasing and the verbiage was some of the most difficult shit that you ever will hear.
I think it was funny, dude.
Oh, it was hilarious.
Put on blast by John Gruden.
Oh, it's hilarious. But it is John Gruden we're talking about there. And, spider wide, banana, XYZZ, 1, 2, right, 3, 4, spider banana, 1, 2, Omaha. I mean, come on now. It ain't easy. It ain't easy at all. And not at all. Yeah, we gonna get another Super Bowl speech from Jason Kelce. That would be great. All right, let's transition here. We got 20 minutes left here. See things on my list here. I see it's great to have a list, but then you don't always get to everything on the list. So upsetting. This is why you need a 2-hour show sometimes. Hall of Fame yesterday. A Major League Baseball Hall of Fame announced along with Fred McGriff, who was put in by the Veterans Committee. Scott Rolen, former Philly, Cardinal, Red, third baseman, voted into the Hall of Fame. They said yesterday on the show when he was announced, the highest or he was the person with the lowest ever first-year ballot voting percentage to ever get in the Hall because his first year on the ballot he only got 10% of the votes, and he got in yesterday. 76% of the 75% votes needed got him in yesterday. He's the only person voted in. I mean, the rest of the list, Todd Helton was close at 72%. Billy Wagner almost got to 70%. Jones, Sheffield, Beltran. A lot of people were hyping Beltran up a little bit there. Jeff Kent, last year on the ballot, fell down to 46%. He's not getting in unless the Veterans Committee does. Former Philly Jimmy Rollins, his second year, went from 10% to 13% on the ballot. We'll start with Scott Rolen, the new Hall of Famer. I know it's a very sticky subject in Philadelphia. He's only, I forget what they said, the 16th or the 18th third baseman ever to make the Hall of Fame. For some reason, it's one of the hardest positions to make the Hall of Fame in baseball. Right there with closer, which is only a handful of closers in the Hall of Fame. Does Scott Rolen belong in the Hall of Fame, Jason?
So here's where I have to talk about my disdain for the Hall of Fame. The problem with the Hall of Fame is that it's more of a Hall of great or of good. It's not a Hall of Fame. It's a Hall of Good because the problem is they're letting too many guys in that realistically 10 years, 20 years ago would have never gotten in.
Right.
Guys like Harold Baines, like guys like, Fred McGriff, like guys that, I look at Scott Rolen and I think that if you look at his numbers, they were decent. But I don't think they're Hall of Fame worthy. That's my opinion. I don't like but if you're going to go with what the current format is, and that's how they're voted, and these sports writers, they have their, a bug up their ass. They don't like somebody. They don't vote them in.
That's the biggest problem.
This is my biggest problem is that you have guys like Jeff Bagwell in the Hall of Fame, guys that are known steroid users, but you don't have Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, who were probably two of the all-time greats, even without steroids. Like, honest to God, like that's what pisses me off about the Hall of Fame because it's just frustrating to me that it's so like I'm trying to think of the word. It's arbitrary. Like it's whoever these writers, they get the vote. I think they need to really look at the criteria and kind of change the format, change how the Hall of Fame is picked.
The Hall of Fame, the only being able to vote for 10 guys, you're only on the ballot for 10 years, whatever. There's so many things wrong. The baseball writers all have agendas and grudges and stuff like that. That's all problems there. So Scott Rolen, is he a Hall of Famer? I'm just going to say this. I think, first off, to be in the Hall of Fame, you need to be one of the best at your position for a certain stretch, whether you want to say 5 years, 10 years, whatever. And Scott Rolen was one of the best third basemen in baseball for a very good stretch, even though he was hurt. He missed a lot of games throughout his career, and he still was one of the best. He is probably one of the top 10 third basemen in all of baseball history, in my opinion. Now, the fact that there's only 16 Hall of Famers that are third basemen says that either A, there haven't been a lot of great third basemen, but if you consider Scott Rolen one of the 10 best of all time at his position, then you have to put it, the Hall of Fame should be one of the best at your position of all time. And he is. I mean, probably one of the 5 greatest defensive third basemen of all time.
Well, and if you want my honest,
RBIs,
well, I was just going to say, I think in my honest opinion, I think that's why he got in, because of the 8 Gold Gloves. The fact that he was,
and you've got to give him credit for that. So he was one of the best at his position. So you have to put him in because of that. Now, if you want to say it's because third base is a weak position in the history of baseball, that's fine. But he still was one of the best at his position, and that's why I think he deserves to be in. Not because the weaker. He's a very good baseball player. You say the Hall of Good. I would say the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Great. But yeah, he was a very good baseball player, but he was a great third baseman, and that's the difference that I want to make there.
And I understand that, and I don't have a problem with him getting in. I'm just saying that I believe that they need to change it. They need to change the format. They need to go back to it being elite players, because I think it's just become so watered down. And it's not just,
but see,
it's not just the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's a lot of Hall of Fames.
Yeah,
I mean, you look at it.
The thing is, you say it should be just elite players. Should it just be elite players, or it should be elite players at their position?
Okay.
Because Scott Rolen was an elite third baseman. He wasn't an elite baseball player. And I think that's where
that's fair enough.
I think that's where the difference in the argument is there is, do you just take the best of the best no matter what position they played, or do you put a value on, say, you have to be one of the best at this position or this position or this position? And if you fall into that category, then you get in. Someone like Edgar Martinez got into the Hall of Fame. He was one of the best DHs of all time. Is that good enough to get you into the Hall of Fame? I mean, he's one of the 3 or 4 best DHs of all time. But is he an elite baseball player? Probably not. But he was elite at the DH position. So there's a lot of circumstances like that that's why I think some guys that are below elite but very good get in. It's because they were very good at their position. They were elite at what they did. And that's kind of what I think the difference is there.
No, and I get that. But like I said, it's arbitrary, because then you can make the argument that there's guys out there that fit that aren't in the Hall. And that was Aaron's argument. That was Aaron's argument. I wanted to get Aaron on here, but obviously he's busy with work. But
no, it's okay. I mean, I just look at, that argument you're making. Look at the voting from yesterday. Scott Rolen got 76%. Todd Helton, 72%. I mean, he was very, very good. Is he Hall of Fame worthy? Probably not. But at 72%, he'll probably get in. But he's a very, very, very good baseball player, and he was a pretty damn elite first baseman. Billy Wagner, one of the all-time saves leaders of all time. He'll probably get in now. I mean, he's got 2 years left, and he's got 7% to make up. He's 68%. You need 75%. He'll probably get in the next 2 years, Billy Wagner. I think Billy Wagner gets a bad rap in Philly just because we hate him because of his time with the Braves and the Mets.
Wagner's a Hall of Famer. He's definitely, in my opinion.
But we normally vote against him just because of his name and what he did against us. Andrew Jones, 4th on the vote at 58%. He was he was an elite defensive player and an elite hitter for 5 years. Is 5 years enough to get you in the Hall of Fame? Probably not, but should it be considered? I mean, Ryan Howard was an elite baseball player for 4 years, 5 years. He's not even on the ballot anymore because he got less than 5% of the vote last year. So once you get 5% or less, you're kicked off the ballot. You never get a chance again. So Andrew Jones was elite for 5 years. He gets a lot of votes. Ryan Howard doesn't. There's an argument there.
Sad thing about Ryan Howard is that had his career started a couple years sooner, he would have been a Hall of Famer, because
possibly, yes,
his end of his career is what kind of makes people disdain for him, like when he was striking out at every breaking ball and he couldn't hit it, he couldn't hit a fastball. But his dominance in that 3 to 4 year stretch, you're talking one of the most dominant players probably that we've observed in our era. At that stretch, I mean, to have 150 RBIs and I think 140 RBIs 3 years in a row, guys don't even get 100 RBIs now. It's just it. So I get what you're saying. So I think that you can look at it a lot of different ways. Yeah, Ryan Howard doesn't have the numbers, but if you want to use that argument,
he's one of the very best at his position for a 4-year span. One of the absolute best for a 4-year span. The other names on this list: Beltran, first year. He'll probably get in at some point. I mean, he's got exactly the same numbers as Andre Dawson for his career, and Dawson's in the Hall of Fame. Jeff Kent last year on the ballot did not get in. He'll probably get put in the voters in the Veterans Committee down the line, kind of like Fred McGriff did this year. Then you got the two Roid Ragers. You got A-Rod and you got Manny Ramirez. I want to say, I say this every single year. I originally, when I was younger, I was not for putting the Roid Ragers in the Hall of Fame. But then I read the mission statement of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. And I read that about 3 years ago, and I changed my opinion. Yes, I'm a flip-flopper. Always have been, always will be a flip-flopper. It's nothing wrong with evolving your opinions. And the mission statement of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is, I'm just pulling out one section of the mission statement: to preserve the history of the game. And for as much as the Roid era was an issue, it is a major part of history of the game. So the elite of the elite, maybe Manny Ramirez, but Alex Rodriguez, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens were the elite of the elite of the elite baseball players of all time. Yes, they cheated, but they are part of history. And not putting them in there is eliminating a part of the history of the game. And that's why now I would vote for Alex Rodriguez. That's why I would vote for Roger Clemens or Barry Bonds if they're still on the ballot. You can't eliminate them from history. You're not going to just delete their names from the record books. So if that's the case, you need to put them in there to teach the future generations what not to do and how not to, play the game. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I mean, I agree 100%. I think it's a joke, honestly, that these guys aren't in the Hall of Fame. Like I said, you have known steroid users like Jeff Bagwell that are. So that just shows you that it's a popularity contest. If people have an agenda, they're not getting in. That's why Barry Bonds isn't in. That's why Roger Clemens isn't in, because it's an agenda from these writers. And it's not fair, honestly, because those are guys that, like I said, pre-steroids were still superstars and probably had Hall of Fame numbers. You look at Barry Bonds' first 10 seasons, he was on a Hall of Fame track before his neck got big and everyone was like, oh, he did steroids.
He needed a helmet 4 sizes
big.
Shit.
He had 500 home runs before he hit steroids. He had 200 home runs when he did steroids.
What grew bigger? The Grinch's heart, when he saw Whoville, or Barry Bonds' head after he injected the cream in the clear? What grew bigger? I don't know. I mean, we need to do a scientific experiment on that.
The guy was
every time the Hall of Fame vote gets announced, it gives me the opportunity to also do one other thing, and that is bring up one of the most unjustly criticized sports figures in Philadelphia history, and that is Mr. Bobby Abreu, one of the best hitters in Philly history, one of the best hitters in baseball that does not get any just due whatsoever. It was his, 4th year on the ballot. He went from 7% to 15% on the ballot. He gained an extra 30 votes this year. He's not going to get in the Hall of Fame. But the fact that he keeps climbing the voting ballot every single year tells me people are starting to realize he was a pretty damn good baseball player. And I remember trying to debate this through and through so many times in my life on how good Bobby Abreu was. And I want to tell you something. Something about Bobby Abreu that people don't realize. He shares Bonds' head. Yeah, exactly. It grew 3 sizes big because of what the Whoville people singing. There's a stretch in his career that from 99 and 2000 where he had double-digit triples, over 25 steals, over 25 home runs, over 35 doubles, and almost 100 RBIs. Now, the numbers that he averaged over those 2 years, only one player had double-digit triples, doubles, homers, and steals in those 2 years. One person. Barry Bonds. He literally played at Barry Bonds' level and was walking 100 times a year, which would have been the league lead if it wasn't for Barry Bonds walking 180 times at it, because he was intentionally walked nonstop. Bobby Abreu, because he wouldn't run into the wall and break his nose like Aaron Rolen, doesn't get any respect in Philadelphia. But he was a damn good hitter of the baseball. Hit for power. He hit for gap power. He hit for average on base percentage. He could steal. He could play defense. He had a cannon of an arm. People forget how good of an arm he had. He gets no respect. He's not a Hall of Famer, but he needs the respect that he's at least in that Hall of Very Good, consideration territory.
He's not a Hall of Famer, but his numbers are actually pretty similar to Scott Rolen's.
Yeah.
Look at his numbers.
I know.
Like, that's pretty funny. It's kind of.
Look at this 2002 season he had. He had 50 doubles, 20 home runs, 31 steals, and 6 triples, while hitting .308, had a .413 on base percentage.
He was a great player. I like Bobby Abreu.
I'm
actually in your corner on that. I think he does belong there, but
I always go back to the 99 season when he had 35 doubles, 11 triples, 20 home runs, 27 steals, walked 109 times.
He was a 5-tool guy.
He was a 5-tool guy.
He was a 5-tool guy when there wasn't many of them playing. Let's put it that way.
And he was durable. He played every single game. He had played 162 games multiple times in his career. He was a doubles machine that could hit for power, get the triples. He drove in over 100 runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 times in his career he drove in over 100 runs. I mean, over 20 steals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 15 times over 20 steals while also hitting 20-plus home runs and driving in 100 RBIs. The guy was everything. Yet he gets destroyed in Philadelphia. Destroyed as a bad baseball player.
Yeah, he does. A lot of people don't like him, but you're right. I think he's definitely, his numbers were dominant, and he was, as you said, very multifaceted. It wasn't just like a home run guy.
Like, put up
the guy could do everything.
Barry Bonds numbers, literally similar to Barry Bonds numbers over a 5-6 year stretch. That's how damn good he was. But the other great thing about him was that when we traded him to the Yankees in 2006, that kind of started the reboot. That's when, we started getting rid of him, Tomey, some other guys. There was a pitcher that we traded to the Yankees with him. Died in a plane crash. I can't remember what his name was. Yeah, he was a replacement player that actually ended up making it in the majors after the strike. What was his name?
I can't think of it, but yeah, he died in the plane crash.
He died in a little New York. Over New York.
Yeah.
But we moved on from all those guys, and then that's when the Utleys, the Howard,
Corey Lytle.
That's right. Yeah. Great pull there. But then that's where the Howards of the world, the Cole Hamels, that him leaving kind of was the changing of the guard to the new young Phillies that led to, the new run that we had in 07. Yeah, Corey Lytle, Drew, Freddie with that one there too. Yeah, I mean, Bobby Abreu, man, I know I get bashed for it all the time. Yeah, I wanted to talk about Scott Rolen deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, and we spent more time talking Bobby Abreu. But again, this episode, next year, we'll be talking about Bobby Abreu again.
Bobby Abreu is Phil's man crush.
He won me fantasy baseball. He was my first-round pick in fantasy baseball 4 years in a row, and I won so many fantasy baseball leagues because of Bobby Abreu. Jimmy Rollins, his numbers did not go up much at all. I really thought he would get more Hall of Fame, potential. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer. He's in that Hall of Very Good for sure. But he's one of the best shortstops of all time. He's not trending or tracking in the direction to make the Hall of Fame. Chase Utley is on the ballot next year. Ryan Howard's already off the battle. Will it come down that 07 to 2011 run where we won a World Series, lost one in 09, that not one Philly from that stretch gets the Hall of Fame? Or does Rollins or Utley eventually get there?
So would that mean Roy Halladay would be the only one?
Well, yeah, but he wasn't on that. All right, so let me rephrase that. The '08 Phillies.
Okay,
that
now, yeah, but I
Phillies.
mean, of that whole entire run, that would mean Roy Halladay was the only one, right? Because I don't think any other Phillies are in. Moyer never got in. Hamels.
Yeah, no one's Hamels isn't going to
Well,
get in.
Hamels is still playing, I
He's
guess.
still not retired, but he's not going to get in. There's going to be, unless Chase Utley, now there's going to be an argument that Chase Utley is going to get the most consideration for the Hall of Fame out of all the Phillies from that
I mean,
era.
he's one of the best
Because
second basemen
the
of all
wins
time.
above replacement for a second baseman in that 5-year stretch is one of the. I saw that. I forget what it was. I saw it last night. It's one of the greatest of all time. I think he's like second or third wins above replacement over a 5-year span. Second or third of all time. So, but Jimmy Rollins is on par with Larry Bowa and some of the greatest shortstops of all time, statistically speaking. Won a Hall of Fame, or won an MVP, won a World Series, won a Rookie of the Year. I think Jimmy Rollins deserves to get more credit than Chase Utley, but Chase Utley was more that Mamba mentality than Jimmy Rollins.
I think shortstop is harder to get in because more shortstops are in. I think second base, there's not many great second basemen. I mean, second base positional wise, like think about it. I mean, look, down the line, like you have Craig Biggio. He was a superstar, but
Craig Biggio was a Hall of Famer at 3 different positions. He started his career as a catcher, then he got bumped out of catcher. He went to center field. He was an all-star catcher. Moved to center field, became an all-star center fielder, then moved to second base and became a Hall of Fame second baseman. So don't compare Craig Biggio to anybody. Craig Biggio is one of the greatest baseball players of all time in my mind. I love Craig Biggio as a kid.
No, I wasn't comparing. I was saying there's not many second basemen worthy of the Hall of Fame because it's just not a position that's like it's not. If you look throughout history.
Yeah, no, I agree. But there's not a lot of great shortstops either. And that's why
I think there's a lot more though. You have guys. You got a lot more guys at shortstop because there's a lot of guys that get in for their defensive prowess. Guys like I'm drawing a blank. Ozzie Smith was pretty much all because of he was the best shortstop defensively all time. Like he was. I mean, he was what Ozzie Smith used to do at shortstop. Like there's not too many guys that could do it.
Right.
But Jimmy Rollins, I mean, if you're going to ask me who I think deserves it more out of Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley, I'm definitely going Jimmy Rollins. I think Jimmy Rollins I think what Jimmy Rollins did overall as a player, I think he was the leader. Chase Utley, like I know a lot of people think he's like arrogant. He was still a leader. They had multiple leaders. That triumvirate of him, Ryan Howard, and Rollins, there's a good one.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Mark, with that comparison. I've seen that comparison made as well. And the fact that he only went up to like 12% this year, though, does not bode well for Jimmy Rollins getting into the Hall of Fame. But we'll see. I'll be curious to see next year if Chase Utley, he's not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but I'll be curious to see where he falls in that first ballot of voting. There's a lot of names being added to the ballot next year. But we got to wrap up the show here. We're already into overtime. We got to wrap this Hall of Fame conversation up. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Trending in the AM. Again, like, subscribe, follow on all social media platforms. Turn those notifications on YouTube so you don't miss a minute of the action. Follow all of us. Drop your comments on replay. I will respond to everything when I can. Still remember the 94 All-Star game where Bonds let the bat slip, but flew into the – yeah. Ozzie Smith was a special character for sure. Special set of hands right there on him. We're going to wrap it up right there. Everybody have a great day. Instead of saying go Birds there, Jason, we're going to end it with the title of the show. As Jalen Hurts would say, or Kobe Bryant would say, Mamba out.
Mamba out.